a delicious lunch and a nice break. Our Q&A panel now is going to be all about the Khadi way, which we had an introduction to this morning, and we've now got a chance to kind of expand on that, discuss that a bit with our lovely panellists, and explore what that means and how we can embed it and answer some of the questions that we were discussing this morning. So my name's Sian and I'm from Ethical Hour, and I'm just going to ask all our panellists to give a brief introduction to themselves and what they do, and then I've got some questions to grill you all with.
Hello. I'm Henry, and I run a company called Bysshe Partnership, and we do all of our weaving in the north of England, and the focus of our company is to establish an exploitation-free, regional and autonomous fabric production company.
I'm Kishore. Can everybody hear me? Right now I'm started this business called Khadi CIC. So CIC is a community interest company. They are governed by the government of Britain in terms of how we use our profits. And we have to spend at least 6% in reinvestment and back to the community. We started Khadi mainly because I was missing my Khadi, which I used to wear in India almost. There was no constant. And when, after 20 years, we found a shop called Khadi, which wasn't selling Khadi. So at that point, we thought we need to introduce Khadi to UK. Within 4 years, the Khadi word was not, hardly anybody knew about it in UK, in the fashion world. It's changed now. So now I think the next step is to go from Khadi to what Khadi represents more than just a fabric, what the Khadi is. I think it's right.
Microphones. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm speaking through microphones. Okay. Hi, I'm Paula, and I'm a farmer, and I founded a project called OneHutFull. It primarily started to look at communities that were at risk and farms that were no longer being farmed in a sustainable way. And it's grown since then, and through the project, which is a touring project, I work with makers and emerging businesses to look at a sustainable way of using locally produced raw materials, employing local people, and hopefully manufacturing them locally as well. The manufacturing part is something we touched on this morning, is very difficult to find, but hopefully we will get more of that. We're now moving on to stage 2 of the project, but I won't go into that. So that's what I do.
Hello, I'm Phoebe, one half of Project PICO. Isabel is hiding down by our stall, but manning the field. But we produce essentials, and we started with organic and fair trade cotton underwear. We work on project by project base. So our first project was exploring working with organic cotton farmers cooperatives, but it is very much an industrialised system that we work in. Once it's gone from the small farms, it then goes into being spun and dyed on a large scale. Whereas we kind of had always wanted to be as hands-on and small-scale and localised as possible, but actually when you're working with jersey, which was is what our underwear is made out of, that was a lot harder to work with small cooperatives on small scale and all these things. So it's been a massive learning curve. Our second project is working with hand-woven indigenous cotton in Gujarat and exploring more of the small-scale production and making towels. And then project 3 is working with native fibres, which was always kind of one of our driving forces, was to be able to create as local a production and circular economies within textiles. And so we are looking at wool, working with wool, and I'm a part-time shepherdess, apprentice shepherdess, I'd say. working on a farm that got in contact with initially with Jess actually as well, to be part of a shearing day, blade shearing and spinning day, and knew about this farm because they were producing wool for, growing sheep, breeding sheep, growing sheep for their wool as well as their meat, and that is, as Paula will know very well as well, a lot of farms have moved away from that in the UK because there wasn't the market for British wool and to actually process the wool and get it to the staple length and the condition that we can work with in the mills is requires a lot more work in grading and so many more processes, so it's a lot more costly for farmers. I think it's really interesting that there's so many parallels with the difficulties with farming and what farmers are saying in India that we've met with what people in the UK and farmers in the UK are saying as well. So there's all these parallels that kind of happen, and actually the same issues that we kind of need to tackle on a local scale, but like globally as well. So.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome. So I'd like, sorry, I'm tangling you up. So I'd like to start by revisiting the question that Kishore posed to us just before lunch around how can we make the Khadi way and all of these principles and all of these problems and things that we're talking about, how can we make that more mainstream and how can we encourage people to get involved? And from a marketing background, I think that what we're really talking about here is spreading ideas. And I think what we can really learn from is the way that plastic-free has gone so mainstream this year. And I think the reason partly why that's happened is because it's become a very simple idea. It captured our hearts and minds when David Attenborough showed it to us, and it was there in our living room and we experienced it, and it was a very, very actionable thing. You can look at that and think, okay, if I take a reusable bottle and a reusable cup with me, I'm helping to solve that problem. So it empowered people. So my question to you guys to begin with is, how can we turn the Khadi way into kind of a digestible concept that we can use to empower people, and how can we use that to make that idea spread?
Okay. Well, I think people want to have positive businesses and non-exploitative businesses. I think we're used to buying cheap clothing and it's accessible, and there's a class element involved too, where some people just don't have the means to be buying more expensive clothes. But I don't think that just because you're purchasing a cheap item, which has probably come at the cost of either the workers involved or the land, it doesn't mean that you're buying into that as a positive approach. I think it's just up to us to maintain business practices that we believe in ourselves, and we want to put those values out into the world. And I guess from a very sort of business perspective, it's my personal belief that what we do isn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be uncompetitive or difficult to compete with other fabric production companies which are producing fabrics which are what I would consider more exploitative. And I think that's the challenge with, and as someone came up earlier with scaling up, I think it is possible to scale these things up, and then we can start to push these processes into the mainstream and show that it is possible to purchase garments which don't have to be that much more expensive simply because they've been made in an ethical way. So I think that encouraging people to get into it is really from the designer side, from the producer side, to believe that you can actually go about business in a different way. I think the sort of business that we have, if you had gone to a university where you're studying fabric production and business management, you would be encouraged not to operate in this way, because there's a sort of logic to global capitalism that says you should operate in a certain way. And actually, I think people just have to take, businesses and designers have to take a leap and just try and lead the way and show that you can actually operate in a different way.
I'll just go back to 20 years ago when I first came to UK. I'll go back to 20 years ago when I came to UK. And organic foods, people didn't want to buy them, too expensive. Those were the logic. But it caught on. So organic was the word which caught on for foods. Similarly, I think it was ethical which caught on for finance, responsible for tourism, and sustainable for timber. So I think for fabrics, it could be natural. So that if you can just start focusing on that one word, natural, and it might catch on. It's a campaigning style that we're trying to adopt.
I think again it's really difficult to engage people in a big concept the whole time. I think one needs to take small steps, and I think it's very important also, what lots of people have said today is it's that middle row of manufacture that we don't seem to have in the UK at the moment. We have artisan mills and we have artisan production, which puts the price up too high. We then have the big corporates up here, which we can't afford, so emerging businesses are unable to actually have the quantity of stuff that they're taking up to these big corporation type processing plants. So I think also it's a way that we have to change how the consumer consumes, because this again changes the way that production is produced, manufacturing is manufactured, farmers farm, which will have a knock-on effect into the environment and the world as a whole. But if you give people small steps to do, I think they find it easier than taking in a whole concept at one time. So we've started this One Change campaign. So I found that when I was out touring, that I kept on saying to people, if everybody in the UK changed one thing once a year, it would soon have a big impact on the whole. And it's not a big thing for anybody to do. You come back with, oh, it's okay for a middle-class white person that has money, and that's fine. I said, no, but you could do it anyway. You can start by asking questions. You can start by saying, so where do my genes come from? Where do my livers come from? Where are my vegetables being grown? What sort of soils are they being grown? So you can start by just asking questions, and I think that gives people a little bit more encouragement then to say, okay, I only have to buy something different once a year. So you can buy your pair of PICO knickers. You can go to your farmer's market and you can say, I want no-dig organic vegetables. Go to their nurseries, see how they grow them. Go to a farm. If you eat meat, go to a farm. You can see it on the internet now. You can choose a farm that is only grazing for environmental benefits. You can choose, and you can see what they do, because if you eat meat, you should eat 100% of it, you should use 100% of the animals. So again, you're looking at a much more all-embracing thing. And again, I think it's the same with fibre as well, which comes across, you've got to use what you've been given and then that processing. So I think it's small steps. Small steps may seem that they're not getting anywhere, but if we all did it, much with the plastics thing, if everybody did one thing, it would soon have a big impact on the environment and everything else that goes with it. And I also think it's a global thing. If you take the problems that we have in the UK, they are very similar to problems of other communities at risk all across the globe. And I think also, I've spoken to several people here who are involved with agriculture, and it's the same thing again. You have a resistance to change in an agricultural sector. And that change will only come about if the consumer demands a change in the way they're eating or consuming.
Yeah, just following on from that, I think as well it's celebrating those changes and making it not feel inaccessible and getting people excited about fibre, and I think I didn't come from a textile background and was very interested in kind of the agricultural side of growing fibres, as well as wanting to produce basics, but and connect to everyone within the supply chain. But actually, the textile world can be slightly intimidating for lots of people because it is so complex and there are so many elements to it, and there's, you've got to learn a lot to feel knowledgeable about textiles. And I think actually, again, kind of starting small, just getting people excited about fibre and doing like twine making and like actually making felt and creating, I don't know, just like actually getting people to, like you said before, like just touching fibres again. And like it's about an education, but it's also about making it fun and connecting people to fibre. Like Iz and I, which Jess and Tallulah were also part of, ran an event called The Nature of Cloth, and we just ran like pretty much like there were workshops and then demonstrations, and like people could come and do natural dyeing and things, but people in the community came because it was quite accessible. We kind of subsidised it quite heavily so that it was free for lots of it, and people came who were just walking past or weren't necessarily like interested in textiles, but left having spent like half a day making a small bit of felt, just like absolutely chuffed that they'd gone away with this small bit of fabric or some twine, and it's like they never thought they would have had so much like enjoyment from this small bit of cloth. So I don't know, I guess it's like it is an education, and it's like making it accessible and fun as well, and celebrating the small changes.
Thank you. I think the fact that we've got people here that aren't from a textiles background but are working in this industry shows that we can make it accessible. Out of interest, can we do a show of hands? How many people here aren't from a textiles background? Oh, me. Yeah, so that's a good portion of us. So I think that shows that we can make it accessible and engaging, and that's an excellent example of ways to do that. So my next question comes back to Khadi and its kind of history, really. And Khadi obviously has a very rich political history as a fabric, and I think a lot of what we're talking about is creating change through the fabrics that we're using and the clothes that we're wearing. And obviously there's the Fashion Revolution campaign, which is probably the most mainstream, widespread example of that came off the back of the Rana Plaza collapse in 2013. But the Khadi example shows that clothes and fabric have been used for a lot longer than that in that capacity. So what role do you guys think that natural fibres are going to play in this kind of discussion and this kind of social change and this community going forward?
Natural fibres, okay. Well, I mean, for us it's really important to know everything about everything that's gone into our fabric, and also to have a connection to the community that we're working in, and also to focus on what you're capable of doing within your region. So for us, we can grow hemp here, we can grow linen here, and so those are the sorts of fibres that we like to work with. And I can give you all of the details of every process that's gone into it and every person that's been involved in it. With synthetic fibres, and I suppose particularly with polys, I mean, for me, it just goes right back to oil production and what's happening around the use of crude oil. And that's just a whole area that we don't want to have anything to do with. And so for us, it's about having a clear sense of the provenance and being able to be totally transparent about everything that's gone into it. And of course, I just think natural fibres just perform much better. I mean, I don't like wearing plastic. So for us, it's really as simple as that. And I guess with a key focus on the community and having autonomous regions, you're giving well, for us, we take quite a sort of macroeconomic approach to it with regards to thinking about potential rural policies. And there's new opportunities to allow communities to have some connection to what is a heritage industry. I mentioned it before with a number of mills that have closed around where we work. And government policy at the moment doesn't seem to be truly reflecting on how to support those communities that are still not really having the best of times. And, new projects like there's always talk about the Northern Powerhouse, which seems to me to be more about having transport networks so people can get out of there. I don't know. It doesn't seem to have a real connection to communities that are living and would like to be working in that area, and I see it as a real growth potential for what we're doing. And of course, I believe in the fibres much more than I believe in synthetic fibres.
When I think of Khadi, I just remember the first time I got contact with Khadi. Time with Khadi was when I'd gone from America to India, very different cultures, and I was lost both when I went to America from Africa and when I went to India. I was looking for different values, and I found this Gandhi's disciples. And what made a difference to me was that what I had in America was participatory democracy. We were part of the student movement that was advocating that. Different from the all left and different from the establishment. That kind of, I imbibed that. But then what I found here was that was connected. A similar idea of participatory democracy, but very strong ethical values, personal ethical values. And that made a difference. And a part of that ethical values was that you should work with your hands, that you should earn your labor. And the first organization that I was connected with, I started working on farm with my own hands, which was strange for me, coming from an Indian middle-class background. But I enjoyed it, digging a well, working on an organic farm. There was a Khadi center there. So it was the connection of three things: personal values, an idea of what kind of a society you want, and how does actual material things connect it to. And I think that's what we need to go going forward.
I don't know about cotton, but I do know about wool, and I think that the diversity of the different wools we have in the UK is immense, and the diversity of being able to do different things with them is immense as well. And we haven't marketed them properly, and we haven't looked again at processing or being able to process these different wools. I think, as John over there said when he was talking, he's found it impossible to find mills that will take the different types of wool and the different lengths of staple. So I think that for me there's never a question. I think natural fibres are the only way to go. I think you have a huge diversity out there of different textures, different thicknesses, softnesses, hardnesses. I think you can do all sorts of things. And again, it's putting that message over. With wool in particular, we haven't done a good marketing campaign, even though we have the campaign for wool, which is now focused mainly on merino. The Australians and the New Zealanders have done an amazing publicity on their wool and on their merino. So it's now worldwide. And I had somebody come to me when I was out and about, and they said, we are passionate about wool. We are passionate about wearing wool because wool is such a natural fibre. You can use it for all sorts of things. It can keep you cool. It can keep you, warm. And I'm even looking for woolen underwear. And I said, oh, that's really fantastic. That's really good. I said, so what wool are you using? They said, well, merino, of course. And I said, you do know that merino, the imported merino, is actually killing our woolen industry. And this is someone that cared so much. And they had no idea that merino wasn't produced in the UK. So I think, again, a lot of it is education. A lot of it is looking at where our roots are, what we have got in the UK, how we can utilise it, how we can get it out there, how we can do a good publicity campaign, how we can show people that we have got a very diverse fibre with cotton. And again, I think the other thing that I think that Kishore has touched on is that we've got to collaborate. We've got to collaborate with other countries. We are a global community now, whether we like it or not. And we do have to look to other communities and other places to import things. And why shouldn't we support those sustainable businesses and emerging businesses and production in other countries? And I think if we collaborate and work together, this is the Khadi way. This is about starting a revolution, which is sort of simmering, but we can make it really come to the fore.
I think also people are really desperate to buy from people now, or that is emerging, and I think that's where we all come into needing to share our stories, and it is all about that, is actually like, and getting people to come along too, like, and actually like, the farm I work on is very active in getting people to come along and learn how to blade shear and actually show those traditional techniques and things, and actually it is all about sharing those stories and finding people that are going to help us get them all out there. And I think people are, like Jess said earlier, desperate for experiences and desperate to know where their things are coming from more and more. It's not the norm, but like when people are, when they feel empowered to be able to ask the questions and actually get a genuine response, they realise that it is out there and it is possible. And I think just encouraging more of those questions, and then the people who are actually engaged and connected to the farms, the fibres, can be like, yep, we've got all that information, and other businesses look to those small producers and they're like, oh, how do we do that? Because actually they don't have those connections in the same way. I think it is complex because when talking about scaling up and things, maybe you inevitably might become less connected, or you grow, and I don't know, it is complicated, but it's, I think, yeah, storytelling is definitely the main thing really. But and people don't want, I think this whole plastic campaign has shown that actually making, like, stop not buying plastic bags and not using plastic bags and things, actually those small changes, again, like Paula said, it makes it possible, and people don't want to be supporting something when it's in the media and they're like, actually that's ruining our planet and killing fish. Similarly, if it's more widely spread, I think people will stop and think, and like, if it is out in the media more, actually people are inherently good, I think, and don't want to, if it's made accessible to make good decisions, then they will, because, yeah, I think so.
I agree, and I think storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication that we have, and it's something that everybody understands. It's the earliest thing that we're taught as children. We're told stories, that's how we learn about the world, and we don't stop learning through stories. So I think if we can turn this into a story of hope against the kind of people that are feeling powerless and are seeing so much plastic in the oceans and are thinking, what can I do? If we can give them a hopeful story that actually you can buy from local makers, you can engage in your local community, you can wear natural fabrics, and you can look good and feel good, and it's a really hopeful, positive story, then I think that will put the message out there in the right light and make that change happen. So we have about 5 minutes left. Does anybody in the audience have any questions that they would like to ask anyone on the panel? Joe? You might have to come here.
I just wondered, and I'm not an expert on this at all, but obviously veganism in the UK is on a massive rise, and we've just done a very small project with alpaca wool, and we had a bit of a, not too bad, but a bit of a backlash from vegans saying you should use wool. And I just wondered whether people thought that something like that was going to impact the use of wool.
I think that it is a question for the individuals, because if you shear wool, there isn't anything actually that happens to either the alpaca or the camel or the sheep. Shearing wool is a natural shedding thing that if you make use of that, I don't think is a bad thing, but I think it is very personal. And some people that are vegan will not touch anything that is to do with animals, and I think that they're entitled to do that. But I think that if maybe you're part of this new sort of revolution of plant-based food, where you're really exploring where your food and fibre comes from in a different context, that if people have the knowledge and the understanding about what animal husbandry is, why you still possibly need animals to graze certain environmentally sensitive areas, you have a product that comes off that you could not waste or should not waste, because that is just as bad as indiscriminate disregard for where your food or fibre comes from. So I think it is a personal taste, a personal choice, but I think that, again, it's education and it's giving people those facts up front that this is what happens. You know, these animals aren't hurt. Gandhian, isn't there one that they take in? I've got several makers that I work with. One is Susanna James, who's in Wales, and she will only get wool from sheep that have been saved from going to the slaughterhouse. And so this person that has the sheep, she's the maker. So those are only shorn for their wool. They were going to a slaughterhouse because they come to the end of their useful life, and they now have more of a useful life and they're very well looked after. So there are alternatives, and I think it's education and putting that out there. Anyone else?
And I think also it's that kind of, it's complicated because there is obviously, like in the UK, the reason we have lots of sheep is partly because they are farmed for meat. But I think actually, again, it's that thing that we used to, I might be wrong on this fact, but I think that wool was more valuable than meat at one stage. So then those animals would have been, they're completely like bred on small scale for wool, and then they died potentially completely naturally. And
it's because of the industrial revolution to change from wool producing to meat producing, because they had more people in the factories that they needed to actually feed meat to, and wool, because of the different mills that were opening in, keep going, that were opening, wool was becoming less important in the UK. So it's a change of use of something, but now we have huge overgrazing of our upland areas by sheep. So a lot of people think that grazing sheep is sustainable. It's a sustainable way of agriculture. Actually, a lot of it is very detrimental. It's the Welsh Hills and some of the borders of Scotland have been decimated by overgrazing by sheep, and we've lost a lot of our natural drainage. So why people get floods now is compaction of sheep on the soil, so that no longer does the water go down into the ground, it falls off the ground, which then causes
it's going sorry.
But anyhow, sorry, you were right. It was, sheep were our main gold for their wool, and secondary has become now meat.
Yeah. So I think if we can get back to that, then maybe it would be good for everyone, and also people who were vegan, and I don't know, maybe then that would be more something that they could feel was more of a natural way. But it's like the whole agricultural system, everything needs to change, but the farmers need to know that there's a market for that, and they need support in transitioning, just as like cotton farmers need support in converting back to organic. It's like, I think, again, something like that. It's complicated.
I think we've got time for one more question. Anyone has one? No, we stunned you all into silence. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you to our panel for sharing their insights. Thank you, everybody. So there's now going to be a spinning demonstration in this space. So if you'd like to hang around, you'll be able to watch that. And or if anyone wants to join in. I've done it before and it's harder than it looks.